Hey guys, it's Tom Triums with the FujiNet project. And for Apple II users, the FujiNet for the Apple II is quickly reaching functional readiness. Most of the functions are available. They are working as intended, and we're now to the point where I need to ask power users and just users alike on the Apple II a question. How do I expose some of the more advanced functionality that's available on the FujiNet to Apple II users in a way that makes most sense? Now, the purpose of this video is to basically ask this question, but in order for me to ask this question, I need to demonstrate the individual utilities from the Fuji and network side of things that run on the Atari 8-bit and show you a bit of what they do in context, and then with this knowledge, show you what's possible, and from there, basically start to ask the question and start talking with you guys. I'm putting my contact information in the video here so that we all can talk together and figure out how best to expose this functionality in a way that makes the most sense. So with that, let's get started. We, of course, have here the configuration program, which we call config. The same thing exists on the Apple II and has exactly the same functionality. The purpose is to get things that are loaded from various host slots, such as your SD card slot or a TNFS file server, different disk images, and to put them into different disk slots or drive slots to have them available on your local computer. This is the most basic aspect of FujiNet. It's the most core bit of functionality, and we know that this is what people are going to use most. This has already been covered in other videos, though, so I really won't go over that. What I will instead do is I'm going to take and go to apps.errata.online, go into the Atari 8-bit directory here, go into the DOS directory here, and let's load up a copy of Atari DOS 2.0, arguably the plainest, most basic form of disk operating system that we have access to here. Just standard single density images. It's the most ubiquitous DOS on the planet. We'll go ahead and select it. We'll mount it in read only, and we'll tap the Option key to mount this in place within a few moments here. Now, it's important to understand that on the Atari, the disk operating system is merely a device that gets loaded in from the disk, loading a handler that exposes a D device for disks and providing the file system and all of that. While I know that this is not how the Apple II does it, I'm showing you, again, this is all being shown in context of the Atari device to show how the network functions are added on top of it. We'll start by basically going to the disk utility package, which we do that by typing DOS and pressing return. And within a few moments, we're presented with the disk utility package menu. And if we do a directory of the first disk here, the one that we had mounted from config, we see that it's a standard Atari DOS disk with a whole bunch of little utilities on it. And in addition, an auto-run sys, which loads the in device so that it can be available to us. Now, these utilities are essentially broken up into two main sections. The first are the F tools, which are for FujiNet control. And they do all sorts of things, such as checking the current network configuration, looking at the host slots that we have configured, looking at the disk slots, the drive slots that we currently have configured at the moment. viewing files on a particular host slot. And so on. We also have tools for doing Wi-Fi scans, setting up network parameters, and so on. We also have tools for creating new disk images on the fly and mounting them into disk slots, ready to go. We'll go ahead and drop in a, let's say, a 90K disk. Actually, wait a minute. I'm going to take a look at the FLH to see where the host slot for my local file server is here. Number 4. Okay. All right. We'll create a 90K disk. We'll put that in, it's going to be in host slot number 4, which is my local file server. Drive to host slot number 4. It's going to be a 90K disk, so type 1, and it's just going to be called work.atr. There it is. It's ready to go. And if we do an FLD here, we'll see that it's mounted and ready to go. At this point, all I have to do is format the disk. Maybe write some system files to it. So you see, I did this without having to break off and boot back into config or have to go over to my web interface to do this. But it's here. And it's all, and these are essentially what all the F commands essentially do. Break out all this functionality into separate utilities that can be used from the DOS of your choice. Very quickly, very effectively. I hope you guys get the point there. But now we can go ahead even, and if we need to go back into config for some reason, I can even do F reset. And it'll wait a few moments as it resets the device, and then immediately do a cold reboot. And since I press the select key, it'll go back into the config program for me. I have this set up in mount and boot functionality so that I can quickly get things mounted without having to go into config each time. But for the next part of this, I'm actually going to take and drop the work. I'm actually going to drop work entirely. And we're going to go back into Atari DOS here. And we're going to use the network utilities. We'll go ahead and go into DOS. And take a look at the individual network utilities here. Now, as part of what got loaded, we have an in-handler device. This is actually a very, very powerful device. This is loaded in the FujiNet, and if the in handler is loaded, then there's also an in device which hooks in as a standard Atari device that you can read and write to. But you can also talk to the FujiNet network bits and pieces directly. In this case, on the Atari over SIO using SIO command, which is what each of these in utilities do. And there are all sorts of different ones here. We have NCD for setting the network prefix for an end device so we don't have to type long URLs every time. We have ncopy, which can take and move files from network resources to local resources or vice versa. We have delete, which can delete files from network drives, directory for network drive directories, login for providing credentials to all sorts of network resources. We can make making directories, printing the current prefix that's available, renaming files on network directories, removing directories, and doing special things like setting character translation properties. Now, I'm going to talk a tiny little bit about how the end device actually works. There are 4 network devices that are typically spawned on a FujiNet target. All 4 of these devices can talk a variety of different network protocols. Some of them, for example, TCP, UDP, FTP, HTTP, HTTPS, SSH, SMB, NFS, TNFS, which is what the FujiNet uses for file resources as well, and other things. All of these different protocol adapters are available, and the function of these protocol adapters is to provide a very clean interface to the Atari and handle all of the heavy lifting of that protocol on the FujiNet itself. So all the computer has to be concerned about is opening an I/O channel with what it wants to talk to and giving it an endpoint, and then it can read and write from the I/O channel that's created at its leisure, with the FujiNet not only doing all the heavy lifting, but doing all of the buffering and everything itself, making it very easy to use. And not only do we have the concept of I/O channels, not only do we have the concept of protocol adapters for those I/O channels, but we also have transformations for those channels as well. We can parse JSON information, for example, or XML data, for example, and query for specific pieces of that data very quickly. So you can talk to modern endpoints. You combine that with TLS, which is encryption, and you suddenly have the ability to talk to any modern API that you wish to talk to on the net. So how does this play out in context? Well, we can start by, let me think about how best to do this. I'll go back into BASIC. We're going to take and reboot real quick. And we are going to, for a reference here, we're going to bring up a web page for a particular, it seems to have moved itself. There we go. Click, click. There we go. We're going to bring up a little web page that I have running on my publicly accessible web server here, fujinet-testing.errata.online, which has a handful of HTTP URLs that FujiNet that I put up there just so that FujiNet could talk to it. And the first one here is an example BASIC program called Blackjack. This is Atari Blackjack. And we're going to go ahead we're going to load Blackjack directly off of the web server with no intermediary in between, with the FujiNet doing all of the translation. And you can see right there, it just did it. Boom, there it is. Without anything in between, I didn't have to copy it over. I literally was able to just take and pull it directly and throw it directly into the machine, transparently. So what else can we do? Well, it turns out a lot. Standard input and output calls can be done. So you can take and grab network resources, API, HTTP gets, that sort of thing. All of these things become really easy just from BASIC itself. But let's take this a bit further. So not only was I able to take and load a program directly off of a web server here, but since I have HTTP put set up on my web server, along with access controls to allow put requests from my local network, I can do this. So I just saved that program and brought it back directly over the network, with the FujiNet doing all of the necessary translations automatically. Let's take this a step further. For this next bit, I'm actually going to have to do a little bit of acrobatics here. And I'm going to hit the reset on my flash card. Where are you? There you are. Hopefully this. There we go. We're going to do a little feat here. We're going to start by loading a copy of Atari Writer, the standard Atari word processor. We still have our DOS disk in the drive here, so it will load our end driver in place. So you saw that there was a lorem.doc. Oops. Actually, we'll skip past that. And what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to temporarily disable my flash card just for a moment so that I can send a command, because Atari Writer wants to take over the machine. So I need to do a little bit of this first. Apologies. Oh, come on. There we go. I have to do it like this because if I turn off the machine cold, then my capture device will be re-enumerated and I will lose my microphone and lose everything and have to take and flip all that back on. Trying to avoid that. So, we are going to take and go to DOS real quick. And we're going to set some things up. First, we're going to set the network prefix using NCD to our web server here. And we can see that this is what the case is. If we do npwd, we can see that's what our network prefix for the main end drive is here. Okay. And we're going to do one more thing here. We're going to load ntrans for the main end device. And I'm going to set mode to 2, which is line feeds. And what this is going to do, because the Atari has a different character encoding than ASCII, I need to translate line feeds to a TASCII end of lines and back again when dealing with software that is going to take text files coming in. So I'll go ahead and set the translation mode for the text so I can read in the bit of text that I'm about to load in here. With that, now I can reset my flash cart and we can go into Atari Writer. Give me a moment. We'll go into the Atari Writer cartridge. This Atari Writer cartridge hasn't been modified in any way whatsoever. It's the standard Atari Writer cartridge. And now that we've got a prefix set, watch what I'm about to do. We can, of course, load lorem ipsum if we wish. But I'm going to load something else. Now I literally loaded the index for that page that you just saw. This one right here. And it's now sitting in Atari Writer. We can deal with it. We can see it. Here it is. But I'm going to do one better. Now I'm going to take and... where is it? Right here. Make a change. Escape to return to menu. Save in index.htm. And the FujiNet is not only going to take and push that to the web server, but do the necessary file name translations in the process to resolve the file name so that it writes the right file on the web server here, even though we only have really 8 and 3 here. We've just written that file to the web server. And to prove it, I just refreshed the page. So there we go. This is what we have here. And this is an idea of just how far we can take it on the Atari side of things and on other systems that we push this to. So my question to all of you Apple II users, hackers, power users, etc. now, given what you've seen, how do we best expose this functionality to the system in a way that makes sense? Do we make individual binary files, bin files, for each utility? Do we make them system files? Do we make them like a giant menu like a la system utilities or Copy2+ with all these things that you can deal with? Do we make an A2OSX set of utilities? Do we make Apple II desktop accessories? Do we make Apple IIGS CDAs and NDAs? What do we do? What should we concentrate on? What makes most sense? Can we potentially take and make a series of extensions to basic.system to provide these functionalities? So that not only can we do file-based things from BASIC, but also open up network sockets. Open, close, read and write to them. Handle them, like we handle files in on the Apple II normally. What do we do? How should we best approach this? So I'm going to leave it here, guys. It's up to all of y'all. I'm gonna go in the direction that makes the most sense after talking to everyone. I've put my contact information in the YouTube video description. And I hope you guys take this opportunity to contact me on Discord, to contact me on Slack, to contact me on Facebook, on Twitter, on Mastodon, to take and tell me how this should work. I want to hear from you. So, until next time, guys, have fun.